Welcome to the second hour of Peace of Mind, the show that talks about the physical, emotional, and intellectual pieces of health and wellness that helps you find peace of mind. Here's your host, James Harvey.
Welcome back to the second hour of Peace of Mind, listeners. Today, Nichole, Brenda, and I are going to discuss holistic protocols towards allergies, asthma. We're going to talk about skincare for the summer, meaning that should we use sunscreens all the time, and when we need to use sunscreens, what type of sunscreens should we use? We'll also talk about foods that really help protect the body against any type of free radical damage from the sun itself, and clothing options. Yeah. It's really interesting concept that we seem to have embraced over the last several generations of Americans, that for some reason apparently we've had a drug deficiency. And apparently we need more drugs to stabilize body issues. Nichole, do you have a thought on this concept?
Well, it's just interesting that we have gone from the approach of, feeding the body and trying to keep it healthy and preventing disease, to now just thinking that it's normal to slice and dice and take a bunch of drugs and that's going to cure disease. And I think we need to take a step back and get back to the basics. And I would say, too, of that 51% of people on drugs, how many do you think are just on one?
Right, and the fact that, every drug inevitably is a toxin. And it's one thing to be on a drug agent for an acute issue. I think it's another thing to stay on drugs indefinitely for chronic disease, because all drugs contribute to more systemic body inflammation, and more systemic body inflammation and toxicity contributes to a worse chronic disease process, regardless of what the chronic disease is.
I mean, I would like to talk a little bit about what you and Nichole do, because what you guys do is you are chiropractors, and many people think of chiropractor as simply a snap, crackle, pop sort of thing, and that's just not true. You really are a health and wellness office.
Well, yeah, for us it really is all about health. If somebody is showing signs of dysfunction within the body, we need to go through a process of restoring function to that body, no matter what it is, no matter what the symptom. It's about finding the problems, fixing it, feeding, supporting, so that you can live a healthy life and that your body can function optimally. And it's not all just snap, crackle, pop. It's through nutrition, it's through dietary analysis, it's through exercise. There's so many different approaches that we use, but it really is just all about health and supporting the human body.
And we run all the major testing and a few other things that a general practitioner or most medical doctors would do, Brenda. We use blood work, we use urinalysis, we use saliva testing for hormones to find out the function of the adrenal gland, etc. And we do hair analysis testing so we can pick up heavy metal toxicities into the body that may be an underlying cause to many body problems, and or specific mineral deficiencies that also contribute greatly to chronic problems.
Welcome back to the second hour of Peace of Mind. Listeners, feel free to call in with any health-related questions at 888-580-5436. Today, Nichole, Brenda, and I are all discussing natural protocols towards asthma, allergies, and we're going to be discussing a little bit about sun and skincare for the sun. Nichole, earlier in the last segment we were talking about Candida, and Americans usually aren't all that familiar with this Candida concept, although it's thought by most healthcare practitioners that as many as 40 to 50% of people might have an underlying Candida issue. Can you help the listener kind of understand how Candida would affect allergies overall?
Yes. Well, first of all, it's important to understand what Candida is. Candida basically comes from an imbalance within your bacteria that naturally live within your body, and most importantly, your digestive tract. And most people want to know, well, how do I get Candida? Well, one of the most common ways is if you've ever been on an antibiotic. Antibiotics wipe out all bacteria, good and bad. And what that does is it sets the stage for the bad fungus or the bad bacteria to kind of take over after you come off of that antibiotic. So it's really important to re-inoculate your system if you have been on antibiotics with the good bacteria, with probiotics. But it also sets the stage for a more sensitive response to an allergic reaction. If you don't have all the good guys in fighting for you, it's going to make your system more sensitive to toxins, to allergens, to the histamine response, to any of those. And so it's really important to just get the body in balance.
And food agents that will also greatly contribute to breaking down the good bacteria in the GI tract, leading to healthcare issues, Candida, etc., would be refined sugars. So that's why we really want you guys to try to avoid things like high fructose corn syrup. We want you to try to avoid drinking pasteurized beers because these also destroy normal flora. Also chlorine. If it's heavily chlorinated water, chlorine is another entity that really breaks down these good bacteria. But the good news is there's so many great agents out there, that even food products that taste great, that can really help you re-inoculate this normal flora and give you good bacteria. Certainly organic yogurts, preferably the lower in sugar organic yogurts, are great sources. Greek yogurts are fantastic sources of the probiotics as well. And then folks can also go to health food stores and buy capsule form probiotics, or in our nutritional store at the office, we do carry some very powerful probiotics as well.
In other parts of the body and even the brain. And I was wondering if you have any, what would a person do if that was suspected?
That's a great question. You know, there's several different approaches that we use. One is you have to address the diet. You have to not feed that Candida infection, and it's going to be the first thing that your body is going to start to crave, and that's going to be anything basically that's white, your white flours, your sugars. You know, a lot of times, especially women, don't realize that they have a Candida overgrowth until it starts to present as a yeast infection. But at that point, it's generally systemic, and as you're suggesting, it gets into all sorts of places within the body. And so sometimes you do have to use some stronger substances, and we have a couple of just whole food organic supplements that we use to help kill off the Candida in those areas. And it depends on where it is, and it can take, it depends on how long it's been there, but it can take years to get rid of if it's been there for 20 years.
Okay. I have a friend that she admits that she's had Candida for a long time, and now she's having problem with focusing and thinking and concentrating. And I was just put the two together, and I thought, I wonder if this is what's going on. Is that a possibility?
It absolutely is. Absolutely hit the nail on the head. We see this across the board, especially with children. Children that have had, for instance, several courses of antibiotics and eating a lot of sugar on top of that are usually the very same kids that come into our office with the ADD, ADHD diagnosis. So there's a huge tie-in with that.
Overseas in the military, he's having quite a bit of trouble, and I just need some idea which way to go, you know.
This is the type of case, personally, that Nichole and I would love to help. This is certainly something I'm extremely familiar with, having dealt with this type of issue myself. The diagnoses in this era of Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel, this all comes out of leaky gut. This all comes out of that mass destruction of the normal flora in the digestive tract that leads to inflammation and leads to the individual doing things like craving sugar, leads to the bouts of diarrhea and or constipation. And so all these things that we're kind of discussing today are the same approach that we would like to take with this individual. You know, the fact that this gentleman went away and served our country for a year in potentially Afghanistan or Iraq, the really unfortunate thing that we see with military individuals is the food that they're usually eating abroad in these situations is processed. And it's not full of live enzymes. It's not full of the good forms of bacteria, the probiotics. And so the food that they're eating when they're away usually greatly contributes to these types of disease processes. Lori, if you would, I'd love for you to give the staff here a name and phone number where we might be able to call you back after show and just kind of touch base with you and learn a little bit more details and potentially figure some things out with you.
Okay.